Dynamite Download.
Dynamite Download, your home for all positive coverage on all elite wrestling.
We cut a promo like the DMD. They're very
download, you guys. Positive energy. You have a great
January recruitment month for this.
Along, I come along in the.
Well, actually, I did see that. I was thinking.
Tired of the cold spray. Tired of the cold spray.
I went to Bat to do an interview with those guys. You know why? Because they spread positivity about AEW.
Welcome to Dynamite Download.
welcome, everybody.
Hey!
I'll scissor you right now.
National Scissoring Day.
Virtual
That's right.
scissors.
Opie Kinky's awesome scissors. You like the new? We wear pink and we got scissoring in the background, man. We got it.
Love it.
I got my Scissor Me Daddy ass shirt on for second show in a row, just because I got to represent because of the National Scissoring Day. But
Of course.
a lot to talk about, and I'm gonna tweak our intro and add a couple clips of our Wardlow interview because that's one of our obviously very proud of that interview. And so
yeah,
I love watching our intro. A lot of shenanigans. The cold spray always gets me with our mascot, our resident mascot Cecil, the luchador himself.
the QT clip gets me every time too, man. I get geeked out every time seeing that, man.
Here's to
QT
the weekend.
going to bat.
That's right. Live on Sammy's vlog.
Love it.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us here at Dynamite Download special Saturday edition, and we're going to be celebrating 4 hours of live AEW television this week, and it did not disappoint. We're talking about over a dozen different matches that we saw, and really, a showcase on some of the true heart and soul of AEW. And before we dive into a lot of it, of those 3 shows that we saw, is there one or two match or one or two superstars that's really, standing out to you where like you're thinking about the next day and so on? And I know I'm putting this up on a tee for you, but what are your thoughts early on before we dive deep?
I know we're in the MLB postseason here, so I don't know if you're looking for me to hit one out of the ballpark here, a little home run, little softball you're tossing me, man. Again, there are certain weeks where it just feels like AEW is very plugged in to Dynamite Download or what we love. And, maybe that's just because Tony and the team like to give the people what they want. But this was one of those weeks, man. Truthfully, I got to see Wardlow go do exactly what I wanted to see happen. Really, when we talked to him, right, really pushed the fact that I was really hoping to see him bring back the open challenge, which he did, and I wanted to see him go toe-to-toe with some big fellas, and getting him to get that match with Brian Cage. And what we're seeing kind of develop with him and Samoa Joe and FTR going against Brian Cage and this new group that's kind of on the scene in AEW. Like, I like it. I like seeing. I love that. So obviously Wardlow jumps out, but then more than anything, Rampage was like a showcase for my guy, the Bastard. It was awesome. I know Rampage, maybe not as many eyes get on Rampage as Dynamite, right? But this was an episode where we got a chance to see one of the absolute best in the world. My point is, while the Elite are suspended, while Kenny Omega is not on this show, the Bastard is one of those guys that when it comes to in-ring, I don't think he has a lot of peers, Sean. I don't think that
You're right.
Pac has a lot of people who can do what he does. Not just offensively, but just the storytelling in his match with Trent. We'll get into that more when we talk about that match, but the the storytelling of that match, even the storytelling of what we're seeing with this feud, the long-term storytelling of this feud with Orange Cassidy has been fascinating. Really love what we're seeing. And again, to me, you give us FTR, you give me the Bastard on the same show. You get to see FTR and Wardlow working together. I mean, literally, you're grabbing my favorites and you're putting them all in one big hodgepodge. I'm loving that this is happening. And I'll throw out one more name before I give it back to you. And I think you already know. I've mentioned FTR. I've mentioned Wardlow. I've mentioned Pac. All of them have had some really nice standout moments. But I think a guy who's really got me buzzing right now is Swerve. I just – and when someone's turning
whose house?
Someone's turning heel, I'm gonna love it, right?
You're right.
And the way Swerve is interacting with the Acclaimed, I know you're firmly on Team Daddy Ass, but I'm already starting to backpedal. And when you want to throw that scissors, I'm starting to pull back a little and want to throw that rock.
Whoa!
Swerve has got me, man, hook, line, and sinker. I'm loving what he's doing. I love how he's slowly becoming more and more bitter. His promos are based in reality, right? His promos are very factual. They're very intelligent. And that's what makes a good heel, is when they might go to a depth or an extreme that we don't want the good guys to go to, but they're based in something that you can connect with. And he brings up the point again. Daddy Ass is going to go one-on-one with Swerve. Cannot wait for that, right? But he was involved in that tag team match. He shouldn't have been,
right?
And so Swerve has a beef with that. Swerve is a proud father, right? And again, brings up, the scissor me daddy. How is that a role model for kids? And again, we laugh and we joke about it. It's great. I love it. But he does bring up a point from a morality standpoint. Man, these guys come on, like this is a little ridiculous. And so I think that Swerve's slow heel turn, the interaction that he's having with the Acclaimed, I'm curious as to how Keith Lee's going to play into all that, right?
Yeah,
because
we haven't seen him since.
He's not quite as forward with this as Swerve, but those are some names right off the top of my head that have me geeked out about AEW. I think this week was phenomenal. We got to see the Death Triangle defend the trios belts finally, which is something I know you've been looking forward to.
This. Oh man, it was a lot of fun, and I was a little behind, so I had to catch up a little bit on my AEW television for Rampage Battle of the Belt today, and I was just geeking out about the content. The quality of the show, those two shows back to back was really excellent. And you brought up a good point. We'll transition from Swerve to the Acclaimed in a second, but I literally laughed out loud when Swerve said about being suspended, because I did get detention for wearing my Mr.
Did you really?
Shirt
That's
to
so
school.
funny.
And
I didn't know that.
I would get in trouble for wearing my Scissor Me Daddy Ass shirt to school as well, and I'd be gladly wear it proudly as well. So Swerve
that is so funny. I did not realize that it struck so close to home.
It did.
And you're right. I mean, if you wore that shirt to school, so that's, again, I love that about Swerve. I love that his heel turn is not out of nowhere, right? It's smart. It's working. I love it. That is really freaking funny that you got suspended for wearing that shirt. And Swerve called that out. That's fantastic.
Yep, I was like, it's so close to home. I want to talk about what was one of the highlights of the show, and really kind of like one of the best feel good moments is the National Scissoring Day. I mean, these guys,
even though Swerve tried to rain on the parade, you are right.
He tried, and Sterling tried to come out there with his paper and Swerve with the rock, but the scissor prevailed on Wednesday Night Dynamite. So whether you like it or not, but this was really a standout moment to me for Bowens, and we know Caster is the guy who could talk nonstop, and he's with the raps, and and kind of the mic guy, and then Bowens is the ring guy. But Bowens really stood out to me big time. The way he just carried the press conference, where he carried the National Scissoring Day, and was just, feeding off the crowd and just so smooth and had our attention the whole time. And I know that I am a big fan of Bowens, and I think what we've seen in this short run and the growth or trajectory, the path that they've been taking, the claim of growing into these tag champs. Bowens is the guy, the MVP of the group. He's single-handedly being the coach and the dominant one in the ring. He has got the catchphrase "Daddy Ass." He's the one who invented that, and is really, man, the hype man. And it's a fun
for sure
role to play, and he is delivering on every levels. And all I got to say is, scissor me.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that you were eating this up, and obviously the crowd is too, right? And that's one of the best parts about what we're seeing about the Acclaim's run is, this is all feeling very natural, very organic. The crowd is everywhere they go. The crowd is waiting for it, and we've been talking about this for a long time, man. When you hear that siren, you know that something funny is going to happen, right? These guys know how to get us to laugh. You said that a year ago. I've said it, man. I've been, and I'm glad to see that people are coming around. It's weird for me though, because again, just as these guys are starting to get super over, they're paired against a guy who I'm starting to pull away, and that's because I think it's the natural heel in me. These guys are starting to become too good at being baby faces, SPD. That's the problem. They're so good at being baby faces. The crowd eats it up. And again, Billy Gunn, badass, daddy ass, going against Swerve one-on-one. The crowd again is going to be firmly behind daddy ass.
Me, daddy.
You're going to be hearing a lot of that. How cool is it going to be able to see him go one-on-one with a guy like Swerve, who's in his prime right now? And Bill, let's be honest. Daddy ass, we've talked about it countless times. That's a dude who looks like he's in better shape than the guy's a freak. He was
Mr. Ass.
He's an absolute freak.
Better shape now as Daddy Ass than Mr. Ass, and he looks like he's having the time of his life too.
Do you think that he'll continue to be having a good time though? Because you get a chance to see that Swerve's promo recently about how he's interested. He wants to hurt him. This is starting to feel personal to Swerve. I think it all goes back to All Out. I think this all goes back to All Out, and particularly, I know all the buzz around that media scrum obviously was around CM Punk and the muffins, but I also sat and watched very uncomfortably while question after question after question came to Tony and Swerve in Our Glory about how over the Acclaimed were and how should they have won at All Out? Tony, should you have called an audible and all this stuff? And you could just see it. Like, I would feel it if I was Swerve. Like, wait, I'm the champ, and
I'd be pissed.
I'm sitting here and you guys are talking about how the other team was better than us and more over than us and they should be the champs and all this stuff. I would be so pissed.
Agree.
So in that moment, it's like right there. You can start to see the seed being planted of bitterness and really disgust, right? if you're Swerve, you're sitting there, I'd be disgusted too. So I really dig how not only you've talked about this over and over and over again, and I love that you're so right. And the Acclaimed now emphasize this so much, that homegrown, that natural, authentic build to them being where they are. This is happening with Swerve now. It's an authentic, like, natural build to where I think he's going to really – I think that all eyes need to be on this match between him and Daddy Ass. I have a feeling that Swerve's going to do something that's going to surprise some folks, and he's going to get it's going to get ugly. I think that the last
heel and maybe DQ, like a DQ beyond, and then Acclaim have to come rescue him.
Go after the leg, do something, do something that is borderline. And again, like,
so they can scissor Daddy ass.
the take away
Maybe like
his
do
ability,
something with his hand,
break his hand, do something
a rock
with
to his hand.
No scissoring anymore. That now SPD that would devastate the crowd.
It would devastate me.
If they tried to give the people what they want and tried to scissor Daddy ass and he physically couldn't do it, his arm was in a sling.
Yep.
I don't know. I think I like the idea. My point really is that I think that the Acclaimed are lighthearted. They're funny. They always make us smile, and they're always entertaining. And I think Swerve he's going to bring some seriousness to this feud and really challenge the Acclaimed in a way they haven't been challenged yet, right? I mean, we've seen them feud with the Gun Club. We've seen their interactions with the Young Bucks. Every time that the Acclaimed are in a feud, they always find a way to get people laughing. Yeah. They're always cracking jokes. I'm intrigued to see how they'll react if they're pushed into a corner where it's no longer fun and games. You know what I mean? Like, I think that Swerve
too soon, I feel like.
Well, you think?
Look at the crowd. Like, the crowd, this is the first time that I can remember where it's universally everyone was behind.
Everybody loves them.
And so you're talking about, like, you're hearing like, let's go Jericho, let's go Danielson, like you're hearing split crowd even versus heel versus babyface. And what we'll talk about the next match in a second, the MJF Yuta, you had a split crowd there.
True.
But when they had that press conference, everyone throwing up the scissors, it's the fun thing to do. I mean, how is it not? Yep. Been there, done that. It's so great. So I don't think eventually I'm for that. Okay, let's rein it in. Let's get some serious, get back to the wrestling and whoop some ass and tell people, wow, we're champs. Right now, you got to keep riding that wave.
Keep it fun.
Get the foam finger scissors out, sell them, get the number one.
You're right.
And so if he hurts Daddy ass, yes, I think that's going to be, is there a third match between Swerve and Glory and Keith Lee coming? I don't think so. I think this is the time where Swerve's got to,
break away,
have, fight off, get retribution for what happened on Daddy ass, and then move on. Because, eventually, maybe in a few weeks, but I think him moving on and kind of turning into this, and then maybe he fused with Keith Lee. They try to get back together or something like that.
Well, my question would be then in that scenario, right, is like maybe we get the third match, right? Like because right now it's even Steven, right? I mean, it's one to one, and then if the Acclaimed win, that could then be the catalyst for what you're talking about, where Swerve could get frustrated. Keith turn on Keith Lee. We've seen that. We've seen the ability for that to happen, right? Very close in the past with the Battle Royal.
Many times.
Maybe that's when that happens, right? That's a good way that both of our ideas blend together, where you allow Swerve to continue to dabble in being the heel. Lee is purposefully, I think, in this instance, SPD, Lee is very distanced from what we're seeing from Swerve, right? So maybe they don't see eye to eye in how they approach things. Maybe Swerve's willing to go a little too far, and Keith Lee isn't willing to go there, right? Because I know that's something that Swerve has talked about, right? Is he prides himself on being a guy who can push Keith Lee to go places that Keith Lee doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a line where, and we get to see Keith Lee and Swerve then implode, and that match in and of itself, those two going head to head would be awesome. There's no doubt about that. That would be fantastic. So, it'll be interesting to see.
Tag team challengers, that makes sense.
Challengers, right? To me, this story's not done, and I think that there's still meat on the bone. And like you said, there's no other clear challengers there yet, right? Obviously, FTR is clearly ranked at that level, and the Gun Club, that they've made it clear they want a shot again, which would be great, right? These guys clearly can have a great program together, and for the belts would be great, right? Now that the Acclaimed are fully established as the champs, that'd be great. But I think that you allow this chapter to close and then you
Yeah.
move on. And I think that there's still a lot of story that could be told with these characters. So definitely interesting stuff. I loved this segment. I thought that not only did the Acclaim hold it down themselves, but as you mentioned, Swerve coming out, Mark Sterling coming out. This is the stuff that I like out of AEW. And, we don't get this all the time. But
No, you don't get a 5-10 minute promo like that.
Not like they used to, where it felt like people in different programs interacting with each other and making, like Mark Sterling getting involved, and like his interaction, his big story right now is with FTR and Wardlow and all that stuff, right? So you bring all of these different pieces coming together. It's just really. That's what I like about AEW is when they treat stories and the characters in a way that's like, okay, guys, if you're paying attention, you see there's more to it than just this week in this little segment. I think that this is interesting, and the tag team division. It's to me, it's wild as you and I talking about it. The tag division with the tag titles and the FTR. Lucha Brothers, the Young Bucks clearly aren't anywhere near this right now. But so many of the staples that we consider as the top teams aren't really in that conversation right now, right?
They're not.
The division has really – the landscape has changed, man. And it's pretty cool because it's like you and I know – this division's as hot as it's ever been. The Acclaimed are so freaking over right now. Their merch sales are through the roof.
So fun.
It's awesome. Fun. It's really cool to see it. And it speaks volumes.
I do hope we get that Swerve Lee 3 and the split of that. And then there's those seeds planted of Neeson Woods, essentially with Mark Sterling. And it would be a good feud as well, because you have Sterling who can talk, and Bowens and Caster who can talk. So that would be a nice sub feud. And then you could transition even into 2.0, then the Gun Club. So you have these heel teams that are kind of on deck. But we'll transition into this, which
that's a great point.
A big story. MJF's first match in almost 129, 130 days. Yeah. And he returned looking jacked, looking huge.
Dude looked monstrous.
And in a show. Yeah, props to him for that body change. We got to give the drizzling shits himself, MJF, his due here at Dynamite Download.
Yeah, no doubt.
He looked great, but it was surprising we didn't get any MJF promo. We got pure wrestling out of MJF, which I was happy for, because you want to showcase that in a guy who doesn't wrestle a lot. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't wrestle till Full Gear or when he cashes in his chips. In terms of a singles match, because I could see this after what we saw in GCW with, if you follow on Twitter, and this live update of Moxley losing and getting attacked by Morrissey and the Firm. I feel like it's going to be a lot of fun programming leading up to potentially MJF Moxley is the Blackpool Combat Club versus the Firm, including MJF. And this was step one. And, I got to give credit to MJF and Yuta. I mean, they obviously have some chemistry in the past and the indies and all that, but MJF, for whatever the sleazeball he is and the personality is, like, he's sold for Yuta. And, that's one thing I think I can separate from him and, let's say, someone like Eddie Kingston, who is kind of off script, over the top. Eddie does sell, but I feel like he doesn't always sell. And MJF sold over the top, like true heel for Yuta, and someone is Yuta's size. He was not he told the story. And so I got to give props to that. And it was a good, fun match to kick off that. It was a very solid match right there, Brian. And I enjoyed the opening match to be that. Two homegrown talents kicking things off. And that's what really stood out to me. I kept thinking, I'm like, MJF is selling this bad, this, he's selling this. I'm like, okay, all right. I have more respect for you, even though you are a POS. I do have a little bit more respect for you to do this to you. Maybe it's a case-by-case basis.
Given his history with you.
Depending on his respect for different wrestlers. We'll see how he is with Moxley. And, we saw how he is with Wardlow. he did the job, but everything in between and around all that
Didn't really
could
sell
have been a little bit better.
Yeah,
But you don't really have to sell a power bomb. Your ass is hurting anyway.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
What do you think of the match, wrestling wise?
Yeah, I mean,
and what happened after the match?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, I thought MJF looks monstrous right now. I know that people have critiqued MJF in the past, where it's like, oh man, if you take away his mic skills and all those things, and you just throw him in the ring, he doesn't look like a main eventer, right? He can kind of blend in because he's not this big imposing presence.
Did Mankind look like a main eventer?
Dude looks like a monster right now, bro. I mean, MJF looks absolutely like a monster. So props to him. The match itself, I'm glad you liked it. I struggled a little bit with it. I felt like MJF was trying to wrestle Yuta's match, and that ties into what you talked about, where he was really selling a lot for Yuta. But I feel like MJF and Yuta are very different styles. MJF at his best is, mostly a brawling focused performer, in my opinion. He blends in some technique, but Max is best when he's able to do his brawling and get those cheap shots in, play to the crowd. And there was a lot of chain wrestling and a lot of very elaborate spots when it comes to pins back and forth. And I mean, there was
that was
a pin spot, which I was just like, I struggle with those. And it wasn't just MJF Yuta match. Like I struggle with those pins where it's like, I'm going to roll you up.
That a lot.
I'm going to roll you up, and then I'm going to flip you around, and then I'm going to it's not necessarily my cup of tea. But again, I felt like it was more competitive than I was expecting, given MJF's status. Right, he just came back, got paid a fat contract.
Yeah.
And that does speak volumes, like you said. It does speak volumes to his respect for Yuta. And again, AEW is clearly fully invested in Yuta. Before we get to the post-match, MJF clearly tried to hang with Yuta and kind of go toe-to-toe and wrestle his style of match. But before the match, Yuta clearly was trying to engage MJF on his strength, which is the mic. This feud was really the most we've seen Yuta get out of his comfort zone and cut promos.
It was a good build for a short time.
That's what I was impressed by. I know Max is usually going to come out ahead and usually will look like he's came out ahead in a promo battle with most people. But that said, I thought that Yuta did really, really well. And given that, to this point, he's been presented as sort of a no-nonsense, just straightforward wrestler.
Yeah.
I was really impressed by his ability to kind of hang on the mic and bring up some good points and take pot shots at MJF. Kind of call MJF out on some of his shit, which is nice to see. So I enjoyed that. But more than anything, I was most intrigued by what happened after the match.
That surprised me.
MJF feeling almost like he didn't in the fact that he's leaning into this devil character so much. It was just interesting that he showed some morals post match. He seemed conflicted.
I don't think he has any.
He seemed conflicted. He didn't want to hit.
Conflicted. I mean, that shake, usually MJF, fakes the shake and kicks you in the nuts, but that one almost seemed pretty legit, but he plays us all like a fiddle all the time.
He's good at that.
But
you're right.
It would be an interesting story down the line, and I know MJF most likely will turn on the firm one day eventually, but not anytime soon because he needs that extra muscle. But that made us more intrigued about what's going to happen with the Blackpool Combat Club firm feud going forward, I think. So very, very interesting about that in a match. So a lot of excitement and a lot of things I'm looking forward to for that. with that storytelling, because I think we can kind of unanimously agree MJF is probably going to be the next champ and going to be a lot of fun to watch, and we'll see where it goes from there. I want to spend some time on this match because to me and to you, well, to us, this was the match of the night, and it delivered, and we were so excited when this got announced. The return of Brian Cage, the Machine, versus TNT champion Wardlow, and these guys brought it. And it was a Hoss battle 101, two bulls going head to head. It was a lot of fun to watch. And, with being a fan of both these guys, it's like, yes, of course, I want these guys to fight, but I never want anyone to like take a loss for no reason and all this. But this is one of those scenarios like, already at Battle of the Belts, I forgot about the loss. The match was great, but I don't think Cage is hurt at all. I'm just happy that I'm so happy Cage is back on TV. Both on Wednesday and Friday, we got a taste of him, and the guy is so fun to watch in the ring. And so this feud with the top guys, FTR and Wardlow and Samoa Joe, it's going to be some great stuff. But all in all, man, the Bull match, the Hoss match was awesome. And I cannot believe the stuff we're seeing out of Wardlow. 4 power bombs on the Machine, Brian Cage. We're seeing some top rope action. The strength, this guy is absolutely unbelievable and giving us more and more and more every single week. And this reign of his is really, really incredible stuff, man. And
yeah, man, this is exactly what needed to happen. No, this is exactly what needed to happen. I mean, this is here's the thing, right? It's not just one of the things that we both love about Wardlow, and the thing that I've seen from Wardlow from very early on that made him so unique is he's not just a big man, right? He's not just a big hoss, as we say. The dude's an incredible athlete. He's and that's what, like, we're getting questions of you. What were some of your favorite parts of the matches? To me, man, like, it's like being able to see this guy do a whisper in the wind off the top, being able to see this guy have Hurricane Ranas, just like smooth Hurricane Ranas in the ring.
Both guys delivered one.
That was one of the coolest moments, right? It's like having both of these big men do stuff like that. And I know sometimes we can take that for granted because, there seems to be dives in every match, right? Like, and nowadays it's like wrestling, all these guys are freak athletes. So I'm not trying to throw shade at anybody else. These guys, what they do out there is incredible.
Yeah, you're right.
But to see everything come together in the total package, like Wardlow, the guy walks the walk, he talks the talk, brother. This guy has no chinks in the armor. I really don't see it. I don't see it, bro. I mean, like, we had like from when we interviewed him, it was evident that, like, all right, this is a guy who has his vision, his sights are set on greatness, right? Like, this guy wants things not just within wrestling, but in life. This is a guy who wants to achieve great things. And you see a match like this where he's going toe-to-toe with a guy who you and I have again, we got to interview Brian Cage, a guy who we have the utmost respect for, an absolute monster in his own right. Somebody who we've wanted to see like have this moment, right? Have this opportunity. It's great to see. But to be able to see two guys who went and they seized the moment. I was so hyped for this match. And for me, like, they both delivered. I think that you walk away from this match and you say, like, you can understand, like, these are guys that are special. They, as I put it, like, if you're a kid and you're watching wrestling, these are the types of guys that feel larger than life. You know what I mean? Like, when I was little, the Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan, these guys that are just bigger than life, jump out the screen. This is what we got to see. And again, I hate to go overboard but I truly, I believe it, man. Like, I think that if AEW handles this situation with they handle Wardlow properly, they could have a guy who can be that. And I know MJF is likes to talk about jumping ship to WWE all the time. I'm telling you, dude, like WWE, this is the type of guy that they would go nuts to have. Wardlow is just, he's special, bro. And I'm very intrigued to see, because what's been great about it, you've been there with me from day one, to go from this guy who was kind of like the background, the muscle for MJF,
Right.
to be where he is now, to see that trajectory, that growth. It's really exciting to see, okay, if AEW handles that slow build, and if they, I mean, looking at how over he is now, if they're able to help build that authentically like they have, now that he's established, and now, I mean, like the Powerbomb Symphony is crazy over. Watching, to me, I know the athleticism was a lot of fun, but those power bombs on Brian Cage, it looked like Wardlow was having fun.
It looked like he
easy. Yeah.
He made it look easy.
It looked like he was having fun.
I couldn't believe how easy he made those look.
It was smooth, and like just rolling him back up and power bombing his ass again. And he was delivering those with some authority, dude. Like some of those felt like they were Kevin Nash jackknife power bomb style ones. And you're putting a guy like Brian Cage down like that. Man, I was loving it. I was eating it up. The commentator team was eating it up. Jim Ross, I love it. I love hearing JR be able to commentate on a Wardlow segment. Just loving the big fella. Without a doubt, I know that he was our top performer, but I have a feeling Wardlow is getting a lot of love from a lot of folks right now. This is a guy who, again, in this era, and Wardlow talked about it, with this environment in AEW, there are no boundaries for what this guy should be able to do, especially what ends up happening. If MJF ends up becoming champ, brother, for it to come full circle and for Wardlow to be able to challenge MJF for the world title, bro, sign me up, man. Now
take our money now.
Yes, sir. I'm all in on that. All in.
Take our money now.
And I see the seeds being planted. That's what I love. Those are the things that keep you invested. Just hoping that I'm right. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, right?
Maybe they do go down that way. And if they do, it'll be so good. It'll be so good. So, but no matter what they do, I'm sure it'll be great. But I want that to be one of those lifelong feuds that never seems to go away.
Just like Thunder Rosa and DMD. The feud
Exactly.
that you never want to go away. It can take a little breaks here and there. But this was kind of piggybacking the jumping ship of the main event of Friday Night Fight, which Friday Fight Night. What if they did Friday Night Fight?
There you go. There you go.
The main event, FTR and Gates of Agony. I mentioned earlier to you about this, how the Cages trios and with FT War a few weeks ago, and now we're going to see this stuff. And so the Gates Agony and Cage need to recruit a fourth member if they're going to have FT or Warjo versus FTR.
Warjo and FTR, you're right.
But for being top guys back on TV, and the first time of us seeing Gates of Agony, which they're a fun, explosive, powerful beast team. The only gripe I have is the finish, but what it is. But the after the match story, I really enjoyed that to hype us up. But this match, I mean, FTR and the Gates of Agony, it was fun to watch. It was a good back and forth. Man, these guys are physical guys.
Mm-hmm.
All four of them just love to fight and love to whoop ass. And so the fact that we're getting this massive men feud with a lot of our Dynamite Download favorites.
You're right.
And Gates of Agony is a team that I could get behind eventually. And I'm curious to see Cage with them in a trios element, because those are three hosses as well. And so everything about this I love, and I think it's great booking. And it was a great way to end the 4th hour of live television on AEW this week, with all men holding gold in the ring, staring down Brian Cage in the gates of agony to go home. The main event, man.
Pretty sweet, right?
Cherry on top of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, sending the people home happy and doing it with like the tease of a war, right? An all-out war, and I love that. Gets you invested. I think FTR for me, the thing it's not often that they're gonna feel like they're the underdogs, right? Like when you're as established as they are, living legends like they are, it's not going to feel like it's not going to be easy for an opponent to make it feel like these guys are the underdogs. But the power and the way that Gates of Agony, those guys, like you said, just their presence, they feel like legitimate. Like you and I have talked about it at length when it comes to Warjo, right? Like who's going to stop those two guys, right? Like who's going to be able to actually beat those guys? And when you bring in a team like this, they feel like they can step up. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be able to beat them, but it certainly feels believable that they could go toe-to-toe and challenge these guys and have them shook a little, right? Sure. And with what they did with FTR, I was impressed. Now, the thing that makes FTR always come out on top is they're just so damn smart. They're always like, and I said this when I watched the match. One of my things that I took away is just like, if you sit and you watch an FTR match, SPD, like there are so many moments where they do something little that might go unnoticed, but it's like they're actively trying to help their partner win. And I know that it's like, well, duh, that's what tag team wrestling is. You're supposed to work as a team to win. But so often, like in tag team wrestling, like it gets lost where it's just like you're just doing moves and the story can sometimes get lost where it's like, no, that guy who's getting beat up in the ring is my brother. That's my guy. And I got to do everything I can to help him get the leg up. FTR is always thinking, a lot of times I love within the realm of the rules, but they're always finding ways to get interjected into the match and to make a difference to help their partner get that leg up.
Sure.
And that's why they've been so successful. They're not the biggest guys. They're not the strongest. They're not the fastest. They're really well-rounded, and they're incredibly intelligent. They work together so well. I love it.
Top guys.
When we talk about tag wrestling, you're seeing some of this coming out in the chat. I want to throw it out there. I am really pumped for Sheeta and Tony Storm against Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. The women's division, I want to throw a little love their way.
Well, let's talk about this. We'll start with this match a little bit, but I mean, what you're excited about most. I mean, something that we were supposed to get, and those right there in the current state of AEW, not what we're seeing here in this trios, but what you talked about of this week's match coming up are pretty much pillars of the division. I think we have a case with Jamie Hayter of something with, similar to the Acclaim, the crowd hijacking.
They're hot for her, man.
It's time. I think you wait. I mean, it's kind of like a weird, if Tony Storm wasn't an interim champ, I think you could pull the trigger quicker. But due to the fact that she's an interim champ, and when Thunder Rosa returns, they're going to have a unification match. But I don't think the momentum for Jamie is slowing down at the moment. She still could eventually dethrone Tony, but it's fun to hear crowds hijack storylines. I'm all for that. I think that's such a cool thing to do, and it works. So if you're at a show and you are passionate about certain things, keep pushing, because you never know what direction they're going to go. This match here on Dynamite, this 3-on-3 trios match, a lot of talent in the ring, a lot of good talent in the ring that we have been high on for years, such as Penelope Ford getting more of a showcase. Obviously, Jamie Hayter's rise of stardom.
Serena Deeb.
Serena Deeb. And the new star on the block, Willow Nightingale, for her to get the pin in this star-studded match was really special. And trusting in her, and shows the growth in her. And I think she's a great addition. She's not officially all elite, but I think Tony would be silly not to sign her because of just everything about her. It's a lot of fun, and you need depth and someone who can go, and she is someone who can go.
I mean,
And
she had a match with Jade that I thought. I mean, I
Yeah.
loved Willow's match with Jade. I thought that like
they should have
she's
gave her a
got-
contract on the spot then.
she's got. I mean, Willow has a natural kind of like there's just something about her that makes you want to root for her. She's just kind of got that likability down pat.
Good theme
And,
song.
Yeah, she's just very likable. I don't know what it is. She kind of reminds me of like the young Bailey vibes that I got when I was in
Okay.
NXT. Just kind of like that natural underdog.
Sure.
Can't beat her down. Her positivity, her
That's
belief
why
in
we
herself,
love her here at Dynamite.
her belief in
Positive
herself.
energy.
Yeah, she just has that belief in herself. She's just constantly pushing forward. I really like that about her. And that said, Team Heel on this one, I know we're giving Willow some praise, but Team Heel on this one is an awesome crew, man. I mean, like, I don't know, I don't want to like over explain
I
it.
mean,
Like
look
this
at
crew,
this.
this crew's sweet.
Yeah.
Like Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, Penelope Ford, and Serena Deeb. Like that's just a sweet crew, man. Like I love it. I love
Who
that
else would
crew.
you want on Team Heel if you had to pick a Team Heel women's division for horsemen?
I mean, you're right. I mean, the truth of the matter is, like, dude, like, I love that group. I love it. Serena Deeb is so damn good at what she does. Every single time I see her, dude, I legitimately, I feel like, I don't know, like, I feel like I'm just a pull string doll. It's like, why isn't she featured more? Like, I love Serena Deeb's work. She's such a smart worker, man. Just the way she wrestles, it's just it's borderlines on like being hyper aggressive, but it's always really calculated and always really smart. And her opponents always end up looking great. I love that about Deeb. As you talked about, the crowd is so into Jamie Hayter. Hayter is a bully in the ring. I love her physicality.
Powerhouse.
Total powerhouse. And Penelope Ford is somebody who just has the it factor. It's somebody who I've always talked about. It's just like, I love that about Penelope. It's funny to me. And I don't want to be a jerk here, but like as a heel, it's really funny to me that like Kip Sabian had like months of build of his like underrated over it thing. And he stepped to Pac. He got put down emphatically. And now he's back to being being Penelope Ford's manager, basically.
Right.
I mean, like sorry, man. Penelope is just so over. She just has that star appeal that it's gonna be hard for him to get out of her shadow. I don't know what to say. She's just that good.
Yeah,
I love that.
Intergender stuff.
Why not?
They were going into that for a little while. You could have that still, like this Sammy, Ty, and other. We saw.
Even if we saw Jericho and Anna Jay working together, I'd like that too. I'd be all for it, man. No, you're right. There are definitely like natural fits on this roster where you could see tandems develop for intergender matches. I don't disagree with you on that, but I think that like AEW knows what they have with Penelope, and the fact that she's on a team with these women speaks volumes, right? So that said, like this whole war that's brewing, it feels like it's like the sides are becoming very clear, SPD, and I'm really digging it in the sense that like the women's division has gotten a lot of criticism and continues to have its critics. But I think this is an example of a story that could really like change everything. And I don't want to overstate that, but I really feel like even independent of Soraya's, like, it seems like she's going to be able to get in the ring, which I'm.
He was cleared
that's
by
huge.
Doc Samson, right?
That's huge, right? Like, yes, she was cleared by Doc. She got physical with Britt, but
Which
like,
was fun.
even just independent of like the high that we all got from her coming back, it's important to acknowledge that like Toni Storm, she's establishing herself as, I think, a bankable commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Sheeta coming in, that promo, if you have not seen it,
Oh yeah,
that promo where Toni Storm and Sheeta are setting the stage for their match against Britt and Jamie Hayter is must watch.
yeah.
Just a cool, calm, collected champion. Toni is not somebody that gets rattled. I really love that about her. She feels like she's a star, and she's one of those people who like doesn't have to try that hard. She just kind of feels like she, just by being herself, she draws attention. She draws that. She's just a natural charisma. But Sheeta coming in fired up, where she fits in this whole thing, if she's just dead focused on DMD, is she become part of the Saraya team? I don't know. But when was the last time you saw the women's division have this many characters, this many stars that have you intrigued on what's going to happen next, right? Like, is Toni when is Thunder Rosa going to come back, and when are they going to have that match between her and Toni?
Right.
Like, when is Jamie going to break off from Britt, right? Is that going to happen? When is Deeb going to finally get, step in and like claim for a title shot? Just having these women get this opportunity and all of them be presented in the way that they were, I thought it was a home run for the division as a whole. I'm really excited to see, and I hate to do this, please, like, I'm tossing it to you, but like,
Yeah.
I always go back to Britt. I know that this is unpopular, but it's like, you look at what's happening right now. Like, you're building, all of this is because of her. I hate to say it, but like,
no, you're absolutely right.
She is the foundation of this division, man. It's like
100%.
None of this is possible without her being as bankable of a commodity as she is, dude.
100%.
Like, she's the straw that stirs the drink in this regard.
No matter who you bring in, Saraya or not, the glue that keeps this division together is Britt Baker.
Is Britt.
That won't change.
And the most fascinating, the most exciting stories the most exciting stories always seem to go around her. And I know it's easy to point at and say Toni's favoring Britt, but like, think about it. Sheeta fans.
Why would you not?
Sheeta fans out there got to be so pumped about Sheeta's, like, her promo and how fired up she is about wanting to get her hands on Britt, right? Sheeta's transformed from being like almost like a goody good, right? Like like somebody who has a gray area now, right? Like, we've seen Sheeta go through wars with Deeb. We've seen Sheeta look like somebody who's willing to push the limits a little bit with violence. And that was all sparked by Britt Baker's underhanded tactics. We've seen Toni Storm. For me, I think Toni Storm proved that she was willing, that she could be the champ when she was in a program with Britt Baker, and when she was able to have promo battles with Britt Baker and not wilt her and fall under the pressure of that. Jamie Hayter has that Wardlow vibe, and Wardlow was, give the devil his due, Wardlow's breakout was only as amazing as it was because of Max. And Hayter's breakout will be amazing because of that rapport and that relationship of Britt with Britt Baker. There's just so much that centers around this, and I think that, like, Saraya's debut, and this is something that AEW does need to be careful about, because I'm a huge Britt Baker fan. But even I will admit, Britt will undercut her opponents to the point sometimes where it goes past feeling like it's a heel cutting a promo on a babyface, and where it's like, you're undercutting a fellow professional that like in a way that hurts them and their credibility.
Yeah.
Like you got to be careful because you don't want her to do something that I think that she has done before. And she's done it with one of our favorites. I think she's done it with Thunder, where it's like it's blurred the lines of like, is this a good heel, or is this someone who's just like maybe a little insecure about someone else taking some spotlight off of her?
Good
and
point.
AEW needs this Saraya debut. They need this to be successful. Not, and I'm always someone who pushes back, Sean. Like AEW doesn't need anybody, right? Like AEW doesn't need CM Punk. Now I love CM Punk's in AEW. They don't need him, right? Like
Agreed.
AEW, like everybody was hyped about AEW signing Bandito and how they need to sign him. I don't think AEW needs to sign anybody, right? Like this roster is loaded. It's bigger. It's bigger than any one star. If Andrade wants to get into a fight with Sammy backstage and try to get himself fired, that's the type of thing, dude, go. Because AEW doesn't need him, right? I want to say it with caution. Like I do feel like AEW needs this Saraya experiment to work in the sense of the timing of it all, right? With like all the craziness and chaos that happened with the Elite and CM Punk, with how big of a debut they made this, and instantly inserting her into a program with Britt Baker, and again, like having her say that this is her division, she's going to shake things up. She is the women's revolution. That goes all the way back to when she was a kid in NXT. She's the women's revolution. Britt needs to be careful with some of her promos because she can border on like cutting down her opponent to the point where it ruins their credibility. And I just don't want that to happen in this scenario. So Britt, I'm asking you, even though I love how ruthless you are, I'm asking you to maybe put on some kid gloves a little bit. It's okay. You don't have to always hit the knockout punch every single promo. I love Britt's promos, but I do think that she needs to kind of let Saraya get her footing back because it hasn't always been easy at this point. Saraya has had some rust. She needs to step it up quickly.
Before we go to end things on our Pac appreciation ending, how would you feel? I mean, picture this. Full Gear, the women's division. Let's call it Jade versus Nyla for the TBS title. Tony versus Jamie for the interim title. And Britt versus Saraya. Those singles matches.
Be awesome.
All this leads to that. You talk
I'm
about
all for
a
it.
solid division if those three matches were to come.
Absolutely.
So I'm calling for it. I'm hoping for it for Full Gear that we're going to get those three matches in the women's division. If for some reason we get kind of that battle team Saraya, team Britt, and featuring more, which we're seeing, I mean, I'll be happy. But I think to really elevate the division, give those singles matches a shot. I'm for more and more faces to be shown, but I think it'd be more impactful to the division if you have those kind of standout moments in that sense. But
yeah, I mean, I think that this was an example that AEW does have enough talent now, SPD, that this women's division shouldn't just be relegated to one match a show. I understand you want to be, and I liked this format. They got a lot of talent on bang for their buck. They got a great showcase here, right? But I do think that you're right. I think that there are seeds being planted here where it's let's let some of these stories flesh themselves out and develop into some big one-on-one matches, and let's give them an opportunity. I think that you've said it over and over again, and you're right. There are certain characters, there are certain people on the show that don't need a title in order to be a big deal. Britt is one of those people. Even though Britt as a champ is awesome, the DMD doesn't need the belt for one of her matches to feel like a big deal. DMD versus Saraya doesn't need the title, and that would be a huge match.
Yeah.
If you put Jamie Hayter getting a title shot, people are going to be invested in that, right? If you have somebody who's built up as a credible threat to Jade, where you could finally break that streak, people are going to be invested in that, right? So
Right.
there are the frameworks for multiple, and this goes back to earlier in the conversation of the show. I love when multiple stories interweave. Like,
Yeah.
let this feel like, I mean, wrestling is a television show, right? And it's like you're not watching a show for a linear story. You want these characters to interact with each other and other characters on the show and bring in those relationships and have those mean something.
Mhm.
And I like where they're headed with this. I think that, again, the Sheeta promo with Tony Storm further emphasizes that point. Allowing these characters to go and weave in their own direction and go do their own thing, and then ultimately come back and interact with the other people on the show. I love that. And speaking of somebody who has a lot of different stories and different people with different things coming together, you have a man who has 2 title belts.
2 belt Tupac.
He wrestled in 2 matches on the same show. This guy is an absolute.
Not just 2 matches back to back.
I mean, SPD, you've heard me for years now, and I think they're like, I got you to come on board with Kenny Omega really early on. I knew you'd like him, and pretty quickly he became one of your favorites.
You're right.
There's no one that I've given more praise to than this guy, and I'm genuinely curious, like, when you get an opportunity like this, because I know you love the Lucha Brothers, right? So you get a chance to see him in a trios match, which you've been chomping at the bit for more trios work. Like, you've been saying, like, hey, I want to see the Death Triangle defending these belts all the time. Like,
right.
now that the trio, how long did we want the trios belts to be a thing, guys? Like,
well over a year.
Us as AEW fans, we wanted this for so long. Let's have these guys have regular matches and showcase their talent. So you being able to see him showcased in this kind of like fashion, am I crazy? Have I been going overboard with him? Do you see what I see here?
It's
man?
no secret that when we interviewed QT Marshall, he mentioned Pac. It's no secret when we interviewed Alex Reynolds, he mentions Pac. And then I was thinking about that the whole time when those two were together and exchanging blows in the ring. I was like, this is great. And I believe one of our other interviews, someone else mentioned it as well. But the fact is, like, even the commentator team says it, and I'm glad he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves. But I don't support this coming to an end anytime soon.
Thank you.
You know, I will protest, sign the petition if Orange Cassidy beats Pac. And I think, for what it's worth, though, it's worth, the match that they had a couple weeks ago was really good, and Orange Cassidy did look strong. But Pac is one of those selfless performers that will sell for anybody, and he'll sell like no other. And
His
so,
selling is
but he'll give
amazing.
you the offense and the aggression like no other as well. And so he's the overall complete package in that sense. And so, just as good as you can perform offensively, you have to be just as good to sell, to storytelling. And so, like,
that's my favorite thing about him. I mean, that's truly my favorite thing about him.
Yeah.
I love watching this dude.
Literally, will just like fall and like.
I love it.
Ray Phoenix is a really good seller too.
You're right. For me, man, like, I know that everybody's all right, like Orange Cassidy's, everybody's counting on now that Orange, like, so Pac is clearly, he's gotten under the skin of the Best Friends, and he's made this very personal with like his willingness to. Yeah. He's made this very personal with his willingness to like go and do whatever it takes to live up to his nickname as the Bastard. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win. Does not care if you like him or not.
Doesn't need it, but I think I welcome it.
I love it. It just adds that extra level of edge to his character. And this is the thing. Like, when you have a guy like him paired with a team like the Death Triangle, with like the Lucha Brothers, and they create this kind of group.
Yeah,
I want them to go. I want them to go on a run. Like, I want to see them. I literally want this group to see, like, together. There's no title in this company that they couldn't win. I know that AEW has, like, it feels like 40 titles right now when it comes to ROH and AAA and all that stuff.
It's diluted.
Think about it. Like, would you argue with me if you told me that, like, the Lucha Brothers were going to challenge for the ROH tag team championship?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Or the AEW tag team
are the best
championship?
tag team in the world.
Would you argue with me if Pac was going to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship at any point? Would you argue? No. I mean, him against Moxley would be an incredible program. Sign me up.
Actually, him against MJF would be a really good program too, honestly.
Size-wise, and they're like MJF's like
on the mic.
And MJF's like style is being like so over the top as far as like a shit talker, and Pac's no nonsense. He would work. So I mean, I want this wave to ride, bro. Watching what I got to see, watching Rampage and being able to see my favorite wrestler get that kind of showcase. Again, this is one of those moments where, like, it's kind of surreal to me. This picture is just, it's freaking cool to me.
There's not many who deserve
not a lot of words I can
belts.
say.
I mean, I think if you could sum it all, I mean, not many workers deserve this 2-belt treatment other than Pac. I think you could do that with Mox because he's been just such a MVP of the company. Or you could do it with the same with Jericho. You know, Jericho could sleaze his way into 2-belt Jericho. I mean, yes. Totally. But other than that, it's few and far between. That being said, like, man, it's one of those. When I knew Orange Cassidy originally was going to be booked against him, I know he's an AEW favorite. I know he's a Tony Khan favorite. I really hope they don't push him to. Usually, when you have that rematch and grudge match, the other person wins. So, Orange Cassidy, if he wins with a freaking mousetrap or roll up against Pac, which I could see happening,
I know it'll drive you crazy.
So mad. I will boycott that because it's not. I can't stand roll ups. I cannot stand roll up finishes. You know, Darby has that. What's that finish? That's okay. So that's a modified twisting submission.
It's kind of like almost a submission pin.
Okay, that I've grown to accept. For a small guy like him, he kind of has like you in like this, you know, Siamese trap pinning predicament, which it is. But the mouse trap and a roll up win is so cheap to me, and I just don't. I've never been a fan, and never will be a fan.
Well, my question is like I'm trying to kind of brace myself for it, right? Because like I do think that like what happens if Orange Cassidy doesn't win, right? There comes a point when like it's like they got to pull the trigger and they got to give the guy an opportunity. It sucks that it's going to come at the expense of Pac, in my opinion. I don't think that makes a lot of. I mean,
there's no momentum for him right now.
That's true. There, like that is a good point. There's not like he's been built up, but he is coming back like fired up, and the crowd would pop huge if he won. But what's the story if he loses? Like, did he just go away? I don't really see a big payoff there.
Ethan Page can dethrone him eventually, which would be a good transition in that sense. But
yeah, I don't want Pac. Trust me, I don't want to be put in a position where I have to argue for Pac to lose. Right? It bums me out, especially to someone like Orange Cassidy, who, you know, I respect that he's incredibly over with the fans, but very different style of wrestling that like I'm into. Right? Like I like kind of more of my stuff to be more no nonsense, and Orange Cassidy he's very entertaining. He's a lot of fun.
I wish I had a picture of you that you sent me with your Orange Cassidy outfit on.
I will struggle personally. I will struggle when that happens if Pac loses. But I have to admit, right, that it softens the blow a little bit knowing that he still has the trios titles with the Death Triangle, and I think that team hasn't really even seen the best is yet to come for the Death Triangle. Like
Their first defense.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you pivot from the singles title with the All Atlantic. Pac has had an opportunity now, I think, to stabilize his presence in the United States. I think the All Atlantic title also presented that opportunity where Pac could be international and still be an AEW showcase. But it feels like he's stabilized a little bit with his presence here in the U.S., so that might change the need for him to be that champion. I don't know. I will say, just the fact that I was able to see that visual of Pac holding both belts. I appreciate AEW for doing that. I think that it's pretty awesome that they reward, like you talked about, one of the OGs of this company, a guy who sometimes gets I think he gets overlooked. He's underappreciated for how talented he is.
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool that this company is not overlooking him and sees what they have. And I think that TK definitely does see that. I think that he recognizes that this is a guy who's a legit top guy. And Orange Cassidy being champion, I think maybe allows that belt to go to other places that might offer more challengers that we would be excited about. You mentioned Ethan Page. Miro would be a great Miro would be a great competitor in this scenario, right?
Bandito, if he signs.
Orange Cassidy kind of being that underdog allows some other challengers, even if they come up short, to look strong, because Orange Cassidy's matches usually feature him getting beaten up pretty good, right? So whereas the Bastard, you need to protect him in a certain way, and he's clearly a heel. So I like some of the heels, the mid-card heels that AEW has right now, and I think there's a lot of them that could use that kind of that could go over the hump. I don't see as many natural mid-card babyface challengers to go against this version of the Bastard, right?
True.
Chris brings up a name, Darby Allin, which that the Bastard versus Darby in a feud, I would be great. I would love that.
It would be a lot of fun.
But yeah, I think the best friends, Trent coming up short, Orange Cassidy getting his revenge. I think that there's definitely a story there to be told. Where do you see the Bastard going with the Death Triangle after this? Do you see a natural fit for them as next challengers anywhere down the road? Because we just kind of saw them get through the death.
I'm trying to sleep on it. I'm trying to sleep on the fact that OC is going to beat Pac, which I don't want to happen. Obviously, no one in the right mind would want that to happen. But I feel like he could avenge the loss by challenging them to a trios match.
Like kind of trying to punish them a little, right?
And then winning and punish them. Maybe kind of like a no DQ trios match or something like that, which would be a lot of fun. And then move on from that.
I'm with you.
Would you rather have the Death Triangle lose their trios belts to Best Friends or Orange Cassidy beat Pac?
I would rather have Orange Cassidy beat Pac one-on-one, unfortunately. Yeah, I just think I personally, I know that you and I are both going to be on the same page with this. I think the Death Triangle should be, especially with the Elite not on the show, right? We have to provide proper context, right? But with the Elite not a part of the weekly content, I think that the Death Triangle should be presented as kind of a wrecking crew. And I get I get that there's a lot of big names on this roster that need to be able to be presented as tough guys. You know, the
Yeah.
Blackpool Combat Club's they're tough, right? Like I get it. But like I would genuinely love to see the Death Triangle kind of go on like a war, like just kind of go after it and beat people up backstage, like call people out. You know, and that could also and here's the thing. I know that Phoenix doesn't necessarily have that in his MO, right? Like he's more of a baby face. But
I love him so much.
Penta has always been the dark side of that brotherhood. And that could also build some intrigue within that group of like Pac being so focused and angry, and maybe losing to Orange Cassidy makes him snap, right? Like I would love that, where it sends Pac like remember the video like where he's sitting in the apartment and there's all of like a million Pacs in the apartment.
Yeah,
I love that.
That was great.
Allow him to kind of have that breaking point and want to go on a warpath, and Penta being like more than down for that. I would be really intrigued to see them kind of just start going after people and beating the crap out of them, because there aren't a lot. I threw that question to you on purpose regarding the trios because it's like there aren't a lot of natural challengers for that would be believable challengers that would also be believable to lose, right? Like you could throw out Wardlow with FTR, but you're gonna see FT War lose.
No.
I wouldn't want to see that, right?
Not at the moment. I mean,
so why not go out there and start problems and try to initiate problems with people?
It's a good booking point.
I would like to see that, right? Like,
well, I'd like to see them go against, like, let's say the Trustbusters, the Factory, and then be like, okay, we're looking for opponents, and then do that. You know, get a couple more victories after they beat Best Friends, and then looking for challengers. Then they're like, no one can step up. Then maybe you have a return of the Elite, if that were the case, you know, months down the line, whatever it may be. Or you play into that dark side and then pushing, as much as I don't want them to be any team heel, that dark side where Penta and Pac are like really going off the deep end, and then Phoenix finally accepts the dark side. It's all dark gear, and then they really turn into these ass whooping, like seeking out trouble crowd.
I like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of intrigue right now in AEW.
Of course you do, Team Heel.
I think AEW is in a situation right now where so much has happened backstage and the roster has been shaken up so much, and the storylines have had to get some reboots, right? Like it's had to happen. But I really feel like this is, and I'm not just saying this, like I really do feel like AEW is making lemonade out of lemons with some of the things that have happened. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool for me to see that, like, how resilient the company feels. Like there's some serious drama that happened. And when you talk about potentially losing the backbone of this company, All Elite Wrestling, you're talking about like losing those guys and losing your top draw. That could have been something that really felt like it was going to take this company down, or send it in a negative direction. And although it wasn't handled perfectly, and there are opportunities for some of the leadership team, and I think Tony himself as well, to learn from this experience and hopefully be able to mitigate this type of stuff from happening more in the future, but also like getting out in front of it and being a leader. I think there are things that they can do to make that happen. But I think that like the presentation of the show, the actual content on screen has been really good since All Out.
You're right.
I think that like there's been some really, and again, maybe it's because Chris pointed it out earlier, is like all my favorites seem to be champions right now, right? Like maybe I'm feeling this way because when I watch the product, I get to see Wardlow featured. I get to see Samoa Joe featured. I get to see FTR with belts. I get to see Pac with 2 belts. I get to see Death Triangle, our favorite group, with the Trios Championships.
So
I
good.
get to see Britt Baker, my favorite female competitor, the front and center of the feud in the women's division.
Yeah.
Shocking, right? Like, I get this, like, Moxley. We are firmly Team Moxley here at Dynamite Download.
Oh, yeah.
To see that guy, the road that he's gone on, and to see where he's at now, and to signing a new 5-year deal with AEW, locked up, bro, locked up. For me, as your best friend, to be able to see Jericho in the position that he's in, Danielson consistently being featured as a leader in the Blackpool Combat Club, it's just, you're wearing the Acclaimed gear, how geeked you are about that group. It's just like, there's a lot of good. There's so much more good than bad.
More love. And
it's really, really fun to, like, for me to be able to say, even with those stumbles, this feels as fun as this product feels as fun as it's ever felt. Like, I love where it's at right now. I love it. And you planted some seeds where I want to talk to you more about this in the upcoming shows, but like, the buildups to what you want, what could be the big matches at the next pay-per-view, guys. I mean, like, it's never too early to start looking at what those matches could be and how we can get there. And I think that, like, you mentioned some really interesting ones in the women's division, but like the tag division, where are we going to go with the tag titles? I'm so interested to see where that's going to go. Like, yeah. We already know that Hangman is clearly the number one contender right now for Moxley, but you know MJF is waiting in the wings, and you know that guy is going to keep things interesting. It's just really even like Brian Cage is being reinserted onto this. It feels like the product feels very catered to us right now, and I'm buying in 100%. Like, I mean, it's very, very cool to be able to sit back and just say, like, yeah, man, like, I'm loving AEW and be happy, like, just as a fan, just to be happy about where it's at. You know what I mean? It's cool to see. I know I'm preaching to Mr. Positivity over there, and it's there have been times in which, you know, we all go through those highs and lows, but man, for how things could have gone after the CM Punk thing and All Out and all that, for how things could have gone and where they are right now,
AEW has not skipped a beat.
They have crushed it. And dude, it's only going to get better. I'm telling you, man, like, the Swerve stuff is going to be gold. Like, I see it. It's going to be gold, bro. Yeah. Like, it's one of those things where you're sitting here wearing an Acclaimed shirt, and I can't wait for you to be rocking a heel, like, Swerve shirt. I can't wait for you to rock that, like, throw that on, because it's gonna happen. Yup. You're gonna be asking me that in a couple of weeks instead of asking me to scissors you to start the show, because you're gonna be on point with my guy Swerve. It's gonna happen. There's so many people on this show that, like, are genuinely, like, this next stretch. How great would it be if Wardlow gets to have these Hoss battles that we've talked about, dude? Like, there's so many characters that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society, what's going on with Daniel Garcia and whole story. Like, there's so much stuff going on right now, bro. Like, we could genuinely have a full 2-hour show just to talk about it, but we got to wrap things up. Was a lot of fun, guys. I'll scissor you the rest of the weekend. I hope you all have a great time. Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate y'all supporting us like you have. Where we are is because of the support that we get from fans like you guys out there in the chat. Really appreciate the love. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend. And scissor me, Daddy Cray.